Hi, and welcome to the third grade, sixth 6 weeks science curriculum preview. Today we're going to briefly talk about organisms in the rainforest part 2. As always, we're going to be using some of these key planning documents. You can find those in Forethought. If you don't have those, you can pause those or grab those after the presentation. Okay, so let's take a look at where we are in the year. We are in Unit 6 in the sixth 6 weeks. Let's take a closer look at how that aligns with fifth 6 weeks here. So we're looking still at our life science standards in general biomes and environments, and then taking a specialized look within the rainforest. So last 6 weeks, we were looking at some of the characteristics of an environment. We were looking at the flow of energy and the effects of changes that different situations would have on those. So this 6 weeks, we're going to continue working on some process skills. We're going to be looking at structures and functions of plants and animals, looking at inherited and learned characteristics, and then looking at some life cycle changes in some particular organisms. So some of these things fit very well into the rainforest. Some of them may be better as a compare and contrast with that. So we'll take a look at some of those resources. I know I talked about this last 6 weeks with the infographic, but I just want to make sure that maybe you're aware of what's going on in the other grade levels, if there might be some opportunities for some neat collaboration. Right now, first grade is working on the desert biome, and second grade is looking at the grassland, and of course we've got rainforest for third, and then fourth grade is looking at aquatic systems, specifically the wetlands, and then fifth grade has been really kind of doing all kinds of different biomes. So as you walk around your campus, your students might be on the lookout for some of these spiraled views. Okay, and then this is something that we will talk about with the scope and sequence, but again, just to remind you that the focus of this unit is not in particularly the rainforest, it's our life science standards, and then looking at those standards within the rainforest lens. So let's look at two different options for that. Like last 6 weeks, we have two different options for pacing. Option one takes us through the content standards in 8 to 10-day units. And as we move through that 5E arc, when we get to the elaborate piece, that's when we start to talk about that particular standard in the rainforest. So Monday through Wednesday, say for instance, if you started it on a Monday, your engage, explore, and explain is going to be whatever's in STEM scopes and aims. When you get to the elaborate piece, you might want to spend a couple of days looking at that particular standard, the structures and functions in this case of plants and animals in the rainforest. And then when you evaluate, you're going to evaluate not only with the rainforest, but lots of different applications. Option two compacts all of the content standards into 4 weeks, which opens up, opens up a 2-week block for a nice research project. So this is the same pacing guide that was available for last 6 weeks as well. So the structure of it's probably pretty familiar to you. So here's a screenshot of our calendar just to kind of help you with the planning a little bit. So I've got an example here for the first content standard, which is 3.10a, and we've got 8 days for that. And it does take 8 days because of the complexity of the standard, not only the verbs that the students are doing, but also the context. They also haven't had this really before, so this is a new concept for them. So this just kind of shows you how you might organize going through the first 8 days of the 6 weeks. Here is that same standard, and then what I've done is I've gone through the unit overview and look for some fits that might be really good resources and kind of given you a step-by-step view of how you might move through that 5E. So I'll let you pause this and take a look at that more closely. I won't read it to you, but this is just an example of how you could move through that arc. You'll notice the little rainforest icon here is in the elaborate section. So if you're doing option one, you won't talk about the rainforest per se until you get to the application part with elaborate. And then just to remind you with option one, when you are getting ready to talk about structures and functions and compare those to maybe the general biomes and environments that are in STEM scopes and aims to the rainforest, I've got some of those guiding questions written here for you. So That'll help you make that connection between what they've learned in a general application and then towards that more specialized rainforest biome. Okay, and then option two, as I mentioned, it just compacts all of the content in these first 4 weeks of the 6 weeks, and then opens up these 2 weeks for an in-depth project on the rainforest. So many teachers have decided to do option one 6 weeks and try option two the next 6 weeks, or they may want to choose to do the same thing. So it's really what fits best for you. This option is pretty common because ELAR has a research project which opens up a little bit more of a block of time. And then this is just a suggested pacing as you compact those into the 4 weeks. I've got those really tied in the number of days for the level of the standard and whether it's new to your students or not. So you can see those last 2 weeks are open up for that research right there. Okay, so we're going to just talk about some things in the unit overview. I know many of you are using those to help you plan, which is great, and that's what that's for. So just a couple of things I want to point out. A new concept that's really new and pretty hard for students of this age are inherited traits and learned behaviors. So I've got that detail broken down into different concepts. So I just suggest that you read through that before you get to that standard, because this can be really an area where students can get some misconceptions, and if those aren't really clarified, it can really hold them up in the later grade levels as they start to get more detailed into this particular alignment. I also want to mention to you that I always look for rainforest connections where I can. So I've just kind of put this little icon here to remind you that I'm going through there and trying to make those rainforest connections where I can, and so that's embedded in the unit overview. In addition to some of the things you'll find in the unit overview, I do make mention in the overview of some resources that I've put into forethought. So sometimes there's not a whole lot of rainforest connections in AIMS and STEM scope, so I'll add those in here in forethought, and I just want to show you where those are. I'll put them in one of two places. If it's just a general unit, like a general overview of a rainforest unit like the Great Kapok Tree, it could apply to lots of different standards. I'll put that under the unit overview, and I'll just connect that under the related resources. So this is a huge resource with lots and lots of different activities that you could go through and pull what you would like to. If there's a resource that is directly and tightly aligned to a standard, like 3.10b, then I'll put those under the related resources under that particular standard. So you can see there's a couple of those down here. Okay, a couple of weeks ago, I presented to your campus principal the status of the labs here in the district and the next steps for using those labs. And many of them had asked me to just remind teachers how important it was to be utilizing the lab, especially in 3rd grade. As they start to really get introduced to a lot more sophisticated and complex concepts. And so I have the priorities there on the left-hand side, just to kind of remind where that fits in with that. So I want to talk a little bit about this piece of the priorities here, and that's that 60% of daily hands-on instruction and how important that is, even in the middle of testing season for you, how important it is to get those students into the lab. And so you'll just see a picture here of some students in one of our campuses that we're doing a plant unit, and it can be as simple as dissecting a plant and looking at some of the structures and functions of that. And then of course you could compare that to some of the specialized structures and functions of plants in the rainforest. So not only the lab is a great place to get your hands on, but also outside, of course. We've got lots of really neat plants, even just weeds in regular trees that you might find on your campus really offer some real world examples of some of the things that you're talking about. So here's some kindergarten students at one of our campuses, and they're working in their journals talking about living and non-living things. We've also got some 5th grade students who are coming in, and they noticed a bunch of ladybugs that were out there on their campus. So just point the students in the direction to look for something, and they'll find something this time of year. Lots of things are coming out in bloom. Lots of insects are starting to emerge. So another thing I wanted to just remind you of, what does hands-on look like when you talk about life science? So I just took a section from the unit overview and looked to see what kids would be doing. Matching card game, charades, and making a survey. That's hands-on. That's what hands-on might look like with life science. When we think about hands-on, when we're doing matter and energy, we might be thinking about measuring things with balances or pouring things into graduated cylinders. But when we talk about life sciences, a lot of times we're making models, we're designing things, here using a dichotomous key, maybe collecting information. All of that's considered to be hands-on. If you look at those process skills, you're really hitting those verbs. So when we think hands-on, really kind of open up your mind of what that would look like, not only kind of traditionally, but also with life sciences. So speaking of the hands-on as well, I wanted to just give you a vertical look at the number of tools that are listed for third grade and the big jump that they take from second grade. Um, Third grade has in 3.4a 24 different science tools that are listed that students should have been using throughout at least one time throughout the school year. So this is a great time of year if you've missed out on using some of those tools that are listed, to make sure that you go back and maybe put a station in your classroom or have a day where you go to the lab so that they can get a chance to learn how to use those tools, and make sure that they understand the function of those tools as well. I mean, you can see how many tools you introduce just by looking at how many they use in second grade and how many you use in third grade. And really having an introduction to those tools is super important as the kids move on up in the grade levels. So the three specific tools that are listed for this unit are notebooks, terrariums, and insect nets. So that's not a ton of them. And so in addition to those, like I said, you might want to spiral back and pick up any of the other tools that maybe your kids need a little bit more practice with from prior units. And if you're looking for some PD that helps you understand maybe what 5E really looks like in third grade, or really how to manage hands-on science either in the lab or outdoors or in your classroom, watch out for the opportunities coming up in the summer to help you specifically address some of those needs that are in the priorities. Okay, I want to wrap up by just giving you an overview and an update from TEA. On the screen, you're going to see a timeline of a project that they've been working on to focus on streamlining the science standards in kindergarten through 8th grade, and then some selected high school courses as well. Back in the fall, TEA received membership applications for a committee to look at the science standards and really look and see where they could be clarified, where they could be, what could be deleted perhaps, or what could be combined. So kind of cleaning up the standards a little bit in anticipation for the revisions that will happen a couple of years down the line. Where we are in the process right now is that that committee has made their final recommendations to TEA. Those recommendations are open now for public comment, and then they will vote on those in late April or early May. So these will be changes that will probably go into effect next school year. So I just wanted to make you aware that those changes were coming up, and there's not a ton of changes for third grade, but there are some significant ones. And I've got a session for you on the August District PD Day, so you can start this school year with a thorough understanding of what's been changed and give you some time for planning. Okay, and then finally, I just want to remind you that back in Canvas, there's a s'more that I've created for you, and it has a visual guide to some of the new life science materials that are in your campus science lab, ready for you to use. So it's just a picture glossary of what's in there, so you know what to look for. And then I've also got some professional development opportunities. We're so lucky to live here in the Metroplex where we have so many things available to us. So I've kind of collected those in one place. So if you go to this more back in Canvas, this is where you'll see a visual guide. It'll open up just some pictures of some things that are in your lab. And then down in the bottom, there's some PD that's happening this spring and summer, and some ideas that you might want to get for some field trips. So just head back to Canvas and you'll see that right there. So thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great last 6 weeks. Please contact me if there's anything I can do to support your science program. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.